and welcome back, Lydia Walmsley. Thank you very much for joining me. Today we're going to have a look back on your 2021 season. Thank you, as I say, for coming on the show. But first of all, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Yeah, very good. Looking forward to, looking back what's been quite an important year for you, really. Your first season in the JCWs. Now, I remember we did an interview right at the start of your season. You'd just done some pre-season testing, and you were talking about how you were getting used to the new JCW car. First round at Snetterton, how were you feeling going into that first round?
Absolutely terrified. I think I went in and I didn't feel very confident at all, to be honest. I think I looked on the entry list and you see all these big names and you see all the people that have been competing for numerous years, and I sort of rocked up, barely even knew how to use the hydraulic handbrake, to be quite honest with you. And to be honest, time restraints, we didn't really have too much testing, so I was feeling a little bit out of my depth amongst this hugely competitive and very experienced field of drivers, but it was a good experience. I don't think it went as badly as I expected it to. I think I actually thoroughly enjoyed it and progressed throughout the weekend, well, as I have done really for every weekend. It just seems like the more time in the car, the quicker I get, which is what we expected really. So it was a good weekend, but certainly was quite a nerve-wracking one. I mean, I turned up and, to be honest, didn't really know how to use a hydraulic handbrake or anything like that. I felt a bit like there was a lot going on in my little brain that weekend, but yeah, it was brilliant. And to be part of BTC Racing for the first weekend as well. Unfortunately, no spectators, and that was the last round where spectators weren't allowed actually in the paddock. But yeah, it was a fantastic weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And it probably sounds like a quite strange thing, but it must have been, cool to get the first weekend, sort of over and done with.
Definitely, and I think I mean, it started in May, which is quite late really. Usually starts sort of April time, so there was quite a lot of it, and I think the longer it took to arrive, the weekend that is, the more I thought about it and the more I worried about it. So to just get the first one out of the way, know what to expect, and knew also what it was like competing on a grid like that as well with all the other drivers. It was just nice to sort of know what to expect heading into the next one, know what to improve on, what we had to work on. So yeah, it's always good to set a benchmark, and definitely first round is the place to do it. There was a lot to learn, but at least we knew what to improve on, which was nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we went from the longest circuit on the calendar, which Snetterton, to one of the shortest, being Brands Hatch on the Indy circuit. How were the JCWs, which are really quick little cars, on such a short circuit?
Phenomenal, to be honest. I mean, when you look at the qualifying timesheets, I can't quite remember. I mean, it was a long time ago. I can't quite remember where I qualified, but I think I was only sort of like 6 or 7 tenths of a second off pole, which is just shows how tight the grid is. And when you look at the timesheets and you think, well, the champion this year, I'm only 6 tenths off him. I mean, that's not really. I mean, you can't even, if you had a stopwatch, you can calculate that. So really, it was quite nice. And when you think how inexperienced we all were and we didn't really know what we were doing, and to be only sort of that amount of time off the pole lap, it's really good, and it's quite a confidence boost really to think that you're not actually doing too bad. But it was really close racing, and when you finish the race and you can still see the leader, that's quite nice. Obviously a characteristic of a short circuit as well. So it was fantastic racing, and yeah, with everyone being so close, I think it was good to watch as well. I hope anyway on TV. So yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, and going around corners like Paddock Hill Bend and Druids in a JCW car, that must have been spectacular. No, obviously you've been in the Coopers, in previous seasons. How does that actually compare? Because obviously the JCW looks a lot bigger, but how do they compare?
Well, when you go around Brands Hatch, I mean, I think notoriously Paddock Hill, everyone sort of looks at it and thinks it's terrifying. And in a Cooper, it felt well, it didn't feel great. But in a JCW that just feels out of control the whole time going around Paddock Hill, it was absolutely terrifying. And especially when there's 28 other people around you as well, all trying to go into Paddock Hill at the same time. It was quite an experience, but it's sort of a baptism of fire really to have probably 2 of the most difficult circuits on the calendar first, and 2 totally different characteristics of each circuit as well, which was good. But Brands Hatch was definitely a good one. Circuit's really good, and it's got a little bit of everything on such a short track, which is really good. But it was a bit scary, I must admit. I wasn't quite, I hadn't quite got to grips with it by then.
Yeah, definitely. Well, obviously another difficult circuit was up next in Alton Park, it was quite a strange weekend. Obviously, first of all, you must have been, quite pleased to get the car home safely and in both the races. But also the JCW must have been really, quite scary around Alton Park, which was it was a very tight circuit. How did you find that?
Well, to be honest, I think JCW is scary on most circuits, but the fact that Alton Park is quite narrow, isn't it? So there's not really a lot of room for error. And I think if anyone remembers the mini race that was on TV on the Sunday, we had 2 rollovers. I think we only did like 3 racing corners. We had 2 red flags. So it wasn't really much of a race, to be honest, which was a bit disappointing. Obviously, all drivers walked away unscathed and it showed the true sort of safety of the JCW, which was quite nice to see. But it was a mixed bag of results, but it was another good circuit to go to, and one that was quite narrow and twisty, and I love Alton Park anyway, so I really enjoyed that one as well. I don't think there's particularly been a weekend which I haven't enjoyed, which has been really good. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I remember asking a while back what your favourite circuit was, and you said Rockingham, and obviously that's sort of it's times have changed. So I was going to say, have you had a favourite circuit that you've driven the JCW in this season?
Ooh, good question. I think probably Croft, actually. I always liked Croft prior. It was probably one of my favourite circuits other than Rockingham anyway. But yeah, I think actually the Croft weekend was a really good one. Had my best result so far that year at Croft, which was really good. And I think that probably helped in enjoying the circuit. But it was a really good circuit and one that has lots of overtaking opportunities, which I really enjoyed. And it was a fantastic weekend, Croft as well. So I would probably say Croft is a newfound favourite, and it's a shame because we're not going there next year, which is disappointing. I seem to find the circuit that I don't go to anymore is my favourite. It's sort of course of nature now. I liked Rockingham, it's shut. I like Croft, and we're not going there next year. So I'll just have to find another one next year, won't I?
Well, whatever you do, don't pick Snetterton, because obviously that's my local one. So we want the minis stay in there. So don't pick Snetterton if we're going to continue with that trend. Obviously, Knockkill, difficult round for you, which first DNF in 3 years, which that's quite an interesting stat. But it must have been good to see your teammate Joe Tanner get his first podium of the season, and obviously the first podium for BTC in the mini challenge.
Definitely, and if it was going to happen at any weekend, Knockkill was a nice one for him because it was his home round as well. So yeah, it was a really, obviously a disappointing weekend on my side, but I think Joe made it better for the team. He took one for the team there and delivered for us. So it was a good weekend seeing him do so well. Obviously, he stood on the sidelines on the Sunday was a bit disappointing and not where any driver wants to stand, but it was actually nice just to watch the minis, watch the action unfold, and see Joe do really well for BTC, which was really good. And I think a breakthrough weekend for BTC as well. It gave everyone a bit of a lift, which was really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So Froudton was next for the Toka package. Now, obviously, that was one of the rounds where the JCW minis weren't racing, but you were there commentating with the legend that is Richard John Neal. First of all, how did that opportunity come about, and how cool was that experience as well?
Oh, it was phenomenal, and I think I found out about it on the Wednesday before the weekend, so I was going anyway, just to support BTC Racing and have a bit of a watch, have an enjoy it, being at a circuit and not being nervous, basically. And then I got the call on the Wednesday to say, would you like to commentate on the Mini Cooper races? Obviously, I jumped at the chance, and then the aspect of being at a race weekend and not being nervous sort of went out the window, and instantly came down. And I thought sort of commentating debut as it was really on ITV4 wasn't exactly a small audience, so not much pressure there or anything. But it was fantastic and actually really good to see that side of it. I think a lot of the time, I know for sure I turn up or I turn the TV on, I don't really think about what goes into the broadcast that you're watching, or when we're racing and that it's on TV, but you don't really think about it. So just to be at a circuit and see the little village that is the ITV sort of hub, because everyone was in a COVID bubble as well, so we couldn't go out and see anybody. So it was like a little village in the middle of Froudton. It was really cool. So it was just nice to see that side, and a fantastic experience. Obviously, Richard was amazing, and meeting all the ITV team was phenomenal. And it was just another thing to say that I've done this year, which was amazing. I think there's such a list now. I feel so lucky, and so lucky to have been given that opportunity, and as quite a platform really. And it was fantastic to talk about things that I'd raced in before. So it was really good. It was amazing, and something that I'll definitely remember for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always lots of action at Froudton, especially in the minis. Obviously, a minute ago you mentioned nerves, and what I was going to ask was, throughout the season, obviously you're driving for BTC Racing. Have you felt more pressure this season, especially with it being in the JCWs, and as I say, being with BTC?
No, because I think BTC Racing have made everything so easy, and I think they said from the get-go that they knew it was my first year, and that the pressure was off basically. I mean, obviously not fully off, because we all want to do well, and we all want to do well for the team as well. But I think everyone knew it was my first year. We weren't expecting to sort of be, top 5 in the first weekend or something crazy like that. So I think we all had the right expectations, and we weren't silly about what we expected. So I don't think there was enormous pressure just because I'd moved up to the JCW. Obviously it is a bigger scale, and that sort of thing. More pressure comes from the other side of motorsport, not what you're doing on track. But that's sort of what's expected really. I mean, being part of BTC has been fantastic, and they've made everything so easy. They've sort of set my weekends out for me, and they tell me where to be when I need to be there. So really, to be part of BTC has made anything so much easier. And there would have been more pressure, I think, not being a part of BTC and doing it on my own and trying to juggle everything on my own, than what it was when I was with BTC. So if anything, it's been fantastic, and they've been really supportive. And so I mean, that obviously has been pressure, and I think being a part of that, everyone's sort of watching to see how it goes. Obviously it was BTC were new to the minis, and BTC were new to having their driver development program and things like that. So I think there were more eyes on it perhaps, but that's just the way the world works, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's good to hear. Croft was up next. Obviously, good weekend for you. You said it's one of your favourite circuits now. Pretty strong. It was the final race where you got your 11th place, which at that point was the best result for you of the season. That must have been really special and rewarding after Knockkill, which was quite a tough weekend.
It was a nice way to come back, definitely. I think we were Croft was sort of the point where we knew that the season was coming to a close, and I think that was the point really where I felt fully comfortable in the car. I think sort of before then I felt like the car was definitely driving me a little bit. That was sort of in control, and I was sort of a passenger just going along with the motion. And I think Croft was definitely a point where I felt like I sort of took the ball by the horns and said, no, I'm in charge of this JCW. And I think it was definitely certainly a transition. And I think from that point on, it's been an upward sort of climb really, which has been really good. But it was a fantastic weekend. Only 2 races that weekend, so it was quite a long weekend. And I think last year especially, as you mentioned, was on the token package, but not for the full year. But even then, I think being on ITV, so many people were sort of contacting me, but then we couldn't sort of meet each other at circuits and things like that. So it was nice this year to meet people that you've seen on Facebook that have made a comment or have messaged me or have wished their support from afar, that now they could get to the circuit, be trackside, see what goes on. And actually it's been fantastic from a partner's point of view as well. I mean, every weekend we've had Morris Lubricants guests come into the awning, which we weren't able to do last year, and it's just been nice to sort of welcome that side of things as well. It's been such such a better year this year for doing stuff for partners and things like that. I mean, like a video call, it wasn't very good. So yeah, to have Morris Lubricants guests, especially coming into the awning, meeting the team, seeing what everything's all about rather than just seeing pictures and videos as well, was really good. Don't really know whether there are many British sports at such a high level really that you can do that. So I think it is fantastic, and especially for partners when they can see their name on TV. I mean, you pay, well, I don't really know how much you pay for an advert on the TV, but you pay a sight more for an advert on TV than you do for a decal on a car. And it's sort of a similar idea really, and for partners to come along and see what it's all about, and like you say, get involved in motorsport. I mean, we've had people come from sort of our partners this year that, to be quite honest, one had a great day out and they want to come again. So it's just, a lot of the time people haven't been involved in motorsport and they don't know what it's all about, and I don't blame them, but they come along and they get sucked into the bubble of what motorsport is all about, especially British touring cars, and they absolutely love it. And it's been brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. So penultimate weekend, Donnington Park, that must have been really cool, racing at some really iconic parts of the track next to other JCW cars.
Really was, yes. And it's sort of, you go down Craner curves and it's a little bit daunting with everyone else sort of going down it at the same time, but it was really good. I think didn't have too much luck that weekend, but all in all, I think it was, so even though the results weren't amazing on paper, I think the leaps and strides that we made together that weekend was really good. And obviously, like you say, a very picturesque circuit, a very great circuit to drive, and probably actually one of my favourites as well. So we'll add that one to the list. So yeah, it was another great experience, and actually I really like Donnington because it's a nice flowing technical circuit, and I think I really enjoy circuits like that. So yeah, it was really good, and I can't wait to go there next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously the season starts there next year, so that should be quite good. Donnington is one of my favourites. I've not been yet, but hopefully next year or two definitely want to visit, because it always provides good racing. As you say, it's really fast and flowing with some really exciting parts like the Craner curves and the old hairpin, and I think it's fantastic.
It really is, yes, and great for spectating as well, because you can see so much of the circuit from one place. I think a lot of the time you can sort of see one corner and that's about it, but with Donnington, because it's so undulating, you can see so much, so it's really great for spectating as well. Highly recommend.
Definitely. Definitely, but yeah, season finale, Brands Hatch, best qualifying of the year and for the season highlights.
It is, yes, absolutely. And actually to be at the final round and do that was really nice. I mean, maybe a little bit annoying because we didn't have another round to sort of hopefully continue the momentum, but it was definitely sort of a bit of a confidence boost. I think a lot of the year I've sort of felt like I've been struggling, and sort of just to break into the top 10 has been really nice. And actually, I think from when you look at the results at round 1 and then you look at the results at the final round in round 7, you can definitely see in my opinion, I think you can see the progression, and I hope everyone else can as well. But it was really good, and quite a shock actually, to be honest. When I came into the pit lane and in qualifying and they told me where I'd qualified, I was beyond happy. It was really nice.
I'm going into next season to continue to build on that.
Fingers crossed, yes. I mean, it's nice to sort of go over the winter break and remember what went well, especially, I mean, that's sort of like the last memory of the year, really, isn't it? The last round. So you remember how well that went, and hopefully improve on that next year. So it's definitely confidence boost, and it's also sort of puts a bit more fire in your belly to keep going, because you've had such a good result at the end of the year. And I think a top 10 finish in your first year of JCW, I do consider that a good result. So hopefully we can continue that next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously winter break now, we've got Christmas and everything coming up. How, as a driver, how much do you switch off from racing? Because I suppose it can be pretty full on, but yeah, I suppose that's why we all love it, I suppose.
Yeah, a little bit stressful, to be honest. But it's actually nice to just sort of have a few weeks and a bit of a lull, really, because it does get so full on during the season. So to have the end of the year and be able to just sort of relax. I mean, it's not just me either, it's sort of the family and the team back at BTC. I mean, everyone sort of breathe a sigh of relief. I mean, the BTC racing lot can't really breathe too much of a sigh of relief because they've got hybrid coming next year, so they're sort of flat out at the minute. But I personally can breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief, which is really nice. But not sure when we'll start testing. Hopefully not too long, but nice to get the bad weather over and done with, and then hopefully we'll have like the nice sunny months to start doing that. Yeah,
definitely. Well, to be fair, with testing this year, I suppose you guys were quite lucky, because obviously with being in lockdown at the start of the year, I know sort of everyone had limited testing, but the weather was quite good by the time you all got out after restrictions were lifted, which we don't.
It's actually been an unbelievable year for weather, to be honest. I mean, I we didn't have, I don't think we've used a single wet tyre throughout in any race this year. It's literally been, every race has been dry, which is actually unheard of. I mean, I've done seasons where every race is wet, so it's actually really lovely to not have used a wet tyre this year for racing. We did have a few sort of torrential weather test days. I mean, I think my last test day before the season was at Snetterton, and we actually didn't even go out in the last session because the circuit was flooded. So it was, you know, I mean, best of both worlds for British weather, but certainly for racing, not put a single wet tyre on it this year. So yeah, it's been really nice. Lovely to have some nice weather finally.
yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much for coming in and doing this season review with me. It's been good to look back on what's been, you know, as I say, quite a big year for you in the JCWs. And enjoy obviously having some time off the rest of the off-season.
Thank you, will do. You too. Take a break.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.